Happy Self-Care Saturday. Can I write on here? So this is my first time. This is my first time. Okay, they said at least 1 minute. This is my first time going live. I made a decision. Hey, I made a decision to go live on my YouTube page because I've been having such a hard time trying to screen record my videos from Instagram to YouTube. And I feel like the Lord was like, girl, that's why I gave you two phones. Just use both of your phones and do it at the same time. But I have never done this before. So, hello and good morning. Happy Self-Care Saturday. I'm going to be talking to the YouTube and I'm going to be talking to Instagram. And I'm going to be looking at the Mac for my content. But I was trying to see if I can write. I don't know if I can. I don't really know how this goes, and I don't want to mess anything up. So hello and welcome. Listen, happy self-care Saturday. Happy self-care Saturday. To some of you who may not know me, my name is Coach T. My name is Coach T, and I am a mental health wife coach and marriage consultant. I coach wives who are going through a marital hardship, a marital separation. Many of the wives that I coach are dealing with some hard stuff. Like they are married to husbands who are unbelievers, who are dealing in addiction, abandonment, adultery, mental and emotional abuse, and God has asked these wives to stay in His marriage. And out of their obedience, they are staying in these marriages. And so I help these wives to navigate and walk through this journey that God has them on in the most healthiest way, by helping wives to prioritize their mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical health. So welcome. Y'all don't usually see me on YouTube live. I'm usually on Instagram live. They used to be over here. But I'm not used to YouTube live. But I wanted to do this and try something different, especially going into the new year, because it's been hard trying to gather my content and trying to screen record from Instagram and then share it. It just takes up so much more time. So I'm gonna see how this goes. We're gonna see how this goes. Jesus be offense today. On Instagram, y'all see my title, Her Alignment. On YouTube, y'all may not see the title yet, but I'm going to put the title up eventually, okay? But today I just want to come in. I want to come in, especially as we are, again, like our husband said, we got like 18 more days until this year is over. We got 18 more days until this year is over. God is still doing some amazing things. One of the two Bible verses that has really been standing out for me, that I've been seeing on a regular, is Luke 1:37. There should be nothing impossible with God. And then another one that has been standing out is it 1 Corinthians or 2 Corinthians 3:18? Which basically talks about the transformation. You know, we go from glory to glory to glory to glory. And so I had told this small little fib on Instagram that I was not going to, be coming on as much, because I really was trying to, allow God to do what He was going to do in me. And I'm really trying to pull away. And I have been better. But because I've been having so many issues with sharing my videos and my messages, I'm like, well, I want to make sure that people get the information, especially with me starting the Her Buoyancy Boost group coaching in the month of January. And so I was like, I want to make sure that they get the information. Let me at least come on and just talk to the people on live, and then maybe I can get them to go from there. All right. And so welcome. Today I want to talk to you about her alignment. Y'all know Coach T, I try to keep it as real with you, as transparent with you as possible. But at the same time, still relaying the message and the word that God wants me to share. What does alignment mean? What does that mean when we say about coming into alignment? And basically, coming into alignment means coming into agreement with whatever it is that God has for your life. coming into agreement with whatever it is that God has for your life. One of the Bible verses that I share with my wife clients all the time comes from out of 1 Corinthians 7:16a, but then also 17 is the second part of that. And it basically says, how do you know, wife? How do you know if it won't be you who could save your husband? How do you know, wife, if it won't be something that you say you do that will not be able to save your husband? And then the next verse to that, verse 17, goes on to say, in whatever situation that you're in wherever you are, in wherever God has you on your journey, make sure that you are doing that, and you're doing that to the full and to his wholeness. Wherever God has you at, make sure you are doing it. Make sure you are pursuing it. Make sure you are actually making sure that you're doing what it is that he's telling you to do, and being a representative of him at the same time. And so one of the things I try to emphasize to wives on a regular basis is her coming into alignment with God's plans for her, especially when God is asking her to do something as hard as staying in a marriage that really does not benefit her. Staying in a marriage that really is like, baby, what are we doing this for? Like, I ain't get nothing out of this. He doing his own thing. I'm living my own life. We not coming together. He's doing, whatever he want to do. Why you got me doing this, God? And so a lot of times I like to break down and just really, really share it wise, one of the main reasons God has asked wives to stay in this position. And so many times a question that is asked, that I get asked a lot of times from wives, when trying to be obedient and doing what God has asked them to do, is, how do I align myself and begin to prepare for the upcoming year, especially with us coming from out of this year. We still here, but we're moving from out of this year, going into the new year. A lot of wives are trying to prep themselves for the up and coming year. They're trying to make sure that, am I doing this journey right? Have I been doing this journey right? Is there anything I'm missing? Is there anything that I should be doing? How do I prep and prepare for the beginning of the year? What's next for me, and where is God trying to take me next on this journey? Like, where does God have me on this journey? Many wives are still seeking counsel. They are still seeking counsel. Don't take this the wrong way, y'all. Ain't no shade. But a lot of times, many wives are seeking counsel from the wrong counselors, right? They are seeking counseling from the wrong counselors, subjecting themselves to people who are telling them what their ears want to hear. Right? They're really just kind of like going along to go along with things. They're coming in alignment with, certain ones. And I always tell wives in situations like this to be careful. Be careful. You don't even know if you could be even entertaining a witch. Anybody who is telling a wife to, hey, sign up with my curriculum, or sign up with my program, or sign up with my courses, and I'm going to show you how to get your husband back. And I'm going to show you what you need to do to get your husband back. And wives have to not be deceived in that. They cannot be deceived in those areas, because they have to know and understand that the only person who can restore your marriage and bring that marriage back to wholeness is God. God is the source of the reconciliation of your marriage. No person cannot restore your marriage. And so one of the things I just try to really highlight is wives got to get aligned with the right counselors. All right. So today I want to come and share with you some truth. And just talk to you about alignment. Wife, alignment starts with working out your own salvation with the Lord. Okay? Alignment starts with working out your own salvation with the Lord. Philippians 2:12 says, Therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. It took me, Coach T, it took me a long time to realize how God was using my marital pain, my marital suffering, my marital injuries to make me a better me, and for me to reflect and look more like his son Jesus. Like, it took me a long time. Like, I was fighting God like crazy, okay? First of all, ain't nobody got time for that, Jesus. Ain't nobody got time for that. I was dealing with all kinds of stuff in my marriage. I was dealing with all kinds of pains and aches and hurts and some things that just didn't make sense. Some stuff that just did not seem fair. And I was just not in agreement with doing this journey the way God was trying to show me how to do this. And so way before my husband, and I've shared this before, way before my husband and I separated, God was talking to me about, walking in alignment with him and getting my life together with him and doing things his way so that he can help me with my marriage. And I was like, man, listen, I ain't the problem. He's the problem. I go to church. I love you, Lord. He don't even know your scriptures. Like, what is up with this? God's like, this girl has no idea. She has no idea. Her husband has always been mine too. All right. I just placed her in her life to keep him there. I have placed him placed her in his life to show him how to get back to me. He just lost his way, but he's always been mine. I didn't want to hear any of that, right? I didn't want to hear any of that. So that was one of the hardest things that I really had to learn on my own journey. Now, I'm not an advocate. I am not an advocate for abuse. I'm not an advocate for mental abuse, emotional abuse, definitely not physical abuse. I do not coach wives who are going through physical abuse because, baby, what can you do in that situation, all right? I am not an advocate for adultery. I'm not an advocate for addiction. I'm not an advocate for abandonment in marriages. But, right? These are the wives that God has chosen for me to coach. It's like, why I got to get the hard stuff, Jesus? Why can't I have like little cute little fluffy stuff? Like, these are the types of wives that God has asked me to coach. These are the ones that I coach. Many of these wives are in these types of marriages, and some, not all, God has asked them to stay married to this type of husband. I emphasize some and not all because, again, this journey is not for everyone. I used to get so much backlash from different wife coaches, from different wives who was, really coming for me. Oh, God hates divorce. God hates divorce. And he does. But he ain't calling everybody to do this, okay? This is not everybody's ministry. This is not everybody's call. This is not everybody, everybody ain't anointed to do this type of work, anointed to be in these types of, situations. This is not for everybody. And so God has called me to, to coach these types of wives. Many of these wives, especially the ones I always just emphasize that are in the home with these husbands, are going through some hard stuff, right? They are like dealing with some hard stuff. And then the question that, I get a lot of times is why? Like, why would God ask a wife to stay in this type of marriage? Why would God even ask a spouse to deal with this type of stuff? Why would God even ask a wife to, battle through something like this? Like, why would he do that? One of the stories that God had to really impress on me to start reading and studying when I started out on this journey was the story of, Hosea and Gomer. And, I had heard it briefly, in church or whatever, but I had really did like a deep down dive study, on that story. And I got some, other books and, kind of compared the books to what the scripture was saying and really got a true understanding of God, really trying to understand why would he ask this man, it's his prophet, to do such a thing. Like, he already knew that this woman was messed up. Like, he knew in the beginning that this woman was no good, right? He knew in the beginning that this woman was not going to do right by him. But yet and still, he wanted this man to pursue in marriage with her, wanted her, them to have kids together, and he wanted this man to like stand in a gap for these ladies. And that was the story that God really had to place in my heart, and help me to understand what it was that he was calling me to. Not only was he calling me to stand in the gap for a lost soul, but he was also using me as a representative, to help individuals understand the comparison of marriage and the love that God has for his people. And so putting all that together, it was a really hard and difficult time for me. And it took me a while to really come to a place of acceptance. And so when I get questions like that asked by wives, there is only one answer to this. that there is only one answer to this. And for many of the wives who have taken my curriculum and, have got my shirt, his wife, I have placed this on the back of their shirts in the past. I think I've changed it. But on the past, I have placed it on the back of the shirt. And that the answer to that question is because his salvation matters to God. Wives do not understand that the only reason that God has asked her to stay or stand in this marriage is because of her husband's salvation. Right? It's because of her husband's salvation. Like I said, when I first started coaching, I used to get a lot of backlash about, helping wives in this area. And a lot of times it was, the backlash came from, you should be teaching these wives to fight for themselves. And I agree, because wives come into this or on this journey with the understanding that I'm supposed to be fighting for my marriage, or I need to be fighting for my marriage. And I say, don't use that word as literal, right? Don't use that word as literal. You're not necessarily fighting for your marriage or fighting for your husband, and you should be doing more fighting for yourself. I agree with that, but a wife should not be fighting for this type of marriage more than she should be yielding to the instructions of God concerning this type of marriage, right? It is not about you're fighting for it, but it's more so of you yielding and really just stripping yourself and surrendering to what God is asking you to do, right? So it's not about a fight per se. And so I used to get a lot of backlash from that. And I tell wives all the times, if you are fighting, then you are definitely on this journey and you're not doing it the right way. On the surface, a marriage of this kind would be the least of my concern. On the surface, people would say this marriage is doomed. This marriage is over. This marriage is a done deal. Okay, I, as a coach and as a person who has walked through this, will not recommend it unless you know that God has told you to do this, right? I would not recommend this. And I use that and I say that as a person who, let's just say, you have so many, and I'm just using this as an example. You have so many pastors who are like building churches and, God told me to build this church and God told me, that I should, start this church and and it's like, are you sure? Because everybody is not supposed to necessarily be pastoring a church, starting a church. Sometimes you are supposed to be using other areas in the church, right? And a lot of times people feel like, they are called because they are a pastor, that they are called to pastor a church or to start a church. And that's not necessarily the case. And so I say the same thing when it comes down to this journey. Yes, God hates the voice, but God is not asking everybody to do this. I would not recommend this type of journey for everyone if you have not heard from God, all right? And this is where so many wives are getting it wrong. Like, this is where they're getting it wrong. They think when God has asked them to stay, right? They think when God has asked them to stay, he's asking them to stay and fight. But all God is asking that wife to do is to just be a representative of his son, Jesus Christ. Hello. He's only asking her to be a representative of his son, Jesus Christ. That's the fight. When you think about the word fight, when you think about fighting, the fight is you being there with a person who is literally fighting or coming against you. That's where the fight comes in at, right? The fight is because the enemy that is working in your husband, and he's working in your husband so hard, it is going to make it difficult for you to want to stay, right? That's where the fight comes in at. That enemy that works in your husband, he's gonna make it so difficult for you want to stay. You can be like, I ain't doing this, Jesus. I'm not doing this. Okay. You're gonna need some weapons. Hey, Miss Lady, you're gonna need some weapons. You're gonna need some tools, and you're gonna need some resources to do this type of work, right? You're gonna need those things. My prayer for wives, in this new season is for them to get complete clarity and understanding about this journey, and to really, really, get to a place where that this is something that you're supposed to be doing. Because for many, this is not just about oh, I'm standing for my marriage, or oh, I'm fighting for my marriage. Listen, this is a ministry. And everybody is not called to this type of ministry, right? Everybody is not called to this type of work. And so I always tell wives to yield and to surrender and to make sure that they are consulting with the Lord as far as what it is that he's asking them to do. I pray that wives will stop seeking and looking for a quick fix or quick formulas. This is a lot of times when you run into those false teachers, those false prophets, witches, okay? Because they're just giving you what you want to hear. They're just giving you and telling you what it is that you want to hear. But I pray that in this new chapter of your life, that you will learn to come into a full acceptance about what it is that God's asking you to do and work through this process. This is not a quick fix. This is not, oh, sign me up. I want to know what all you did to get your husband back, what all I need to do to get my husband to come back home, and baby, TikTok, that's it. I'm ready to go. That's not how this go, right? That's not how this go. At the core of this journey, at the core of you saying yes to God, it is as equal to you telling God, I'm going to do this your way. Right? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this your way. When you say yes to this assignment, when you say yes to this journey, you are basically telling God, I surrender and I'm going to do this your way. Right? And that's where the problem comes into play with a lot of times with wives, right? This have been my experience with wives that I have coached. This have been my experience with myself. Wives say with their mouths that they want God's help, right? They're saying, God, God, I'm here. I'm gonna do whatever. Choose me, pick me. I'm here. I'm gonna do your will. God is gonna help me on this journey. God is gonna continue to keep me. God is gonna do this and that, whatever. But yet and still, they're bickering and complaining about the assignment when things start to get rough. Right? They're bickering and complaining about, wait a minute, God. Like, I didn't know it was going to go like this. Wait a minute, God. I didn't know you was going to allow him to act this way. Wait a minute, God. I didn't know we was going to go this way. Right? This assignment starts with being in alignment with God yourself. Right? And you get in alignment with God by working out your own salvation with fear and trembling. I cannot emphasize it enough. Wives are missing the biggest blessing of this journey, right? I speak to so many wives, and I listen to them, and I listen. I'm a listener. One of the doctors told me at my job, he said, you have a great gift. You are a great listener. Like, well, I do this. This is what I do on a regular basis. I listen. I have a guy has given me an ear to hear, and I hear certain things that other people don't necessarily hear or catch. And so when I'm listening to wives and I'm jotting down notes and I'm taking down things, I'm like, she don't have it. It's a disconnect, right? The problem that the wives are missing on this journey is that they're so focused on the reconciliation of their marriage that they're not focused on the reconciliation with Christ, their relationship with Christ, and the reconnection that God is trying to bring back together with that wife in him, right? There has been something that has taken place on your journey, and God is like, bam, I'm going to use your marital injury. I'm going to use your marital grief. I'm going to use your marital pain to get you back, right? But wives are so focused on, oh my God, my husband is doing this, and he's doing that, and he acting this way, and he did this, and he did that. And so they're so focused on the marital part of it that they are missing the biggest blessing of the journey. Wife, God uses your marriage pain as a vehicle to drive you right back to him. Right? He uses your marriage pain as a vehicle to drive you right back to him. Your marriage pain was the invite. I always tell wives this. If you go get my book, all right, it's in my book. The marriage pain, your marriage grief, it was the invite. It was your invitation to refuel your relationship with God. Right? Something has happened where you have lost your way. Like I said, I was in the church, going to church on a regular basis, in the ministry, serving, helping, working with other wives and husbands, doing all these types of things. And baby, I ain't know nothing. God was like, you have no idea. Because my thing was, God, I am not the problem. This man is the problem that you telling me to stay here with. This man that you telling me not to leave. This man that I am not the problem. He is the problem. You need to check him. You keep coming to me, God, but he is the problem. It's not me, right? And God wants to refuel that relationship that he once had with you, right? Many times when I share this, the next question I get is, But what about my husband? Right? But what about him? But what about the pain he's caused me? But what about all the things he's done wrong? Okay, is God going to just X out all his wrongdoing? Is God not going to deal with him? Is God not gonna deal with none of that stuff? And my response to that is he's not. God is very, very aware of what's going on in your marriage, wife. He knows exactly how you got into this place. God is very, very much so aware of how you got to this place, right? And God is going to get to your husband, but he want to first deal with you. He want to first deal with you. And wives have to understand this is so important for you to get this revelation. God is going to deal with your husband eventually, but he gonna deal with you first, right? Why is it so important? Because this is the place where God established the plan of restoration and how he's going to work out things for you, your husband, in your marriage. Or how he's going to restore the relationship with you and him, and how he's going to bring things around till it all works out for your good. Because a lot of times, wives, I have had stories where wives have said, well, I feel like God had told me that, me and my marriage was going to, be this way. And I feel like God had said that, God was going to restore my marriage and God was going to do these things, yada, yada, yada. But my husband still divorced me anyways, but, this have happened. And if you have not taken my Restore the Bride curriculum, you can get that from me. And I talked about that, the reasoning behind divorces and why divorces take place. And I get in depth conversation about why a God allows a divorce to take place. All right. And so, no, I'm not going to give you the answer to that. You have to get that curriculum for me to give you that answer. But I talk about that in detail. Why does God allow a divorce to take place? Okay. There's only one reason. There's only one reason, all right? But you would have to get the Restoring the Bride curriculum for that. This is important for wives to understand and know that God is for your marriage covenant. Let me say that again. God is for your marriage covenant. The top of the year is coming, wife, right? The top of the year is coming. And you are still trying to figure out, why is this marital restoration stuff not working? Like, why this ain't working? Okay. You heard other testimonies. You've even did some of the things that these people have shared from their testimonies. You've been going to church. You've been reading your Bible. You've been fasting. You've been praying. You've been journaling. You've been listening to the videos on marital restoration. You're doing all this stuff on repeat. Okay. You're doing all this stuff on repeat, yet still there are no changes, right? There's still no changes. In fact, your husband has gotten worse. The situation is worse off than before. It's like, wait a minute. Now, this person said you need to do this, and this person said you need to do this, and I did those things. How I did those things, and this is not working. This person said you got to do this, and this person said you got to do that. How am I doing these things, and this stuff is not working, right? Your husband has got worse. Your situation has gotten worse, and now you feel like I'm in a slut place. Now you feel like where am I at? And my question to you would be, have you located the disconnect? Have you located the disconnect? Now, I want to just pause on that before I say this, but before I go to that part, one of the reasons why I highlight that wives need to have their own personal coach, counselor, whoever that's working with them, is because everybody's strategies is different. Sometimes you're trying to use somebody else's strategy, or you're trying to use somebody else, what somebody else did, and God is saying that's not what I want to use for you. This person was able to use fasting, praying, reading the Bible, going to church, and going to a group session, and that worked for her, right? Where God is saying this person, they need to actually connect with somebody, and she needs some one-on-one, and she needs to be coached by somebody one-on-one, and she needs to be doing specific things, and that works for her. Testimonies are great. Listen to these videos and people's stories about, their restoration stories are great, right? Going to church, fasting, praying, journaling, all those things are needed and necessary. But there is a what's the word? A tailor-made strategy that God has for you. And this is why I always try to tell wives, you need to know what God is saying to you specifically. Because what God may be saying to one wife, even if y'all have some similarities, even if some of the things that you're going through is the same, what God may be saying to one wife and telling one wife to do, he might not necessarily be telling that other wife to do the same thing. And that's why I always tell wives, you have to be really, really mindful of that when you are, I tell wives, take the meat, chew up the meat, and spit out the bones. What works, works. But if it don't work, it doesn't work. There are some things that you're just gonna have to go deeper with. Everybody is not, this is not a, you do this, you do this, you do this. I don't coach like that. And that's why I do the, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but that's why I do the one-on-one sessions like I do, because everybody's situation is different. Y'all may have a lot of similarities, but it's different, right? And so I'll come back to that part. So my question I ask wives usually is, have you located the disconnect, right? Have you located the disconnect? Because there is obvious a disconnect, right? If you're doing these things and you are not seeing no type of results, and you're doing these things because even if it's not working out like how she wanted to work out, or how it worked out for another person, you should still be seeing something, right? You should be still seeing something, unless there's a disconnect. And sometimes these disconnects can be visible and sometimes they can be invisible, but it is something that's there, right? 99.9% of the time when these things are happening, there is one or two things or both going on. Number one, it could be a heart problem, or number two, it's an idolatry problem. And these two things is what I will call her blind spots. If y'all have listened to any of my coaching or any of my teaching, I've shared all the time, wives are being deceived and they're not recognizing their blind spots, okay? These are what you call the blind spots. And these things are very present. These are very present problems that wives are unaware of that they are actually having. When I say a heart problem, maybe a heart problem, there's some unforgiveness going on. This lady is dealing with some type of emotional distress. There's some torment. There's some things she has not released yet, right? Those fall underneath the heart problems. Then the idolatry comes in. Is this wife making her husband her God? Has this wife made her marriage her God? Has this wife prioritized her husband in marriage over God, right? And so what God is doing, he is always going to check the motive of, so what you came to me for in the first place, right? What you came to me for in the first place? Are you coming to me because you really want me? Or are you coming to me because you wanted me to just fix your marriage? Are you seeking me out because you only want me to restore your husband and bring your husband back home and bring things back to a healthy place? Or are you seeking me out because you actually want me, right? When a heart problem or idolatry problem is present, this has to be worked out by God. Wives are trying to bypass these things, and it's like, baby, you're not going nowhere. You're not going nowhere. This is a glitch that needs heavenly maintenance. It needs heavenly maintenance and intervention. And that requires a wife to do her work. And the work is the part that wives are trying to avoid. The work is the part that wives do not want to deal with. They want to just come on. They want to listen to a good video. They want to get some good keys. They want to get some good tips. Write those things down. Apply those things, and that's it. That's it. Wives are trying to skip over the work. They want to skip to the good stuff without not having to face and deal with the hard stuff. Wife, you have to understand and know the breakdown of your marriage didn't start with your husband cheating. The breakdown in your marriage didn't start with his addiction and his bad choices. The breakdown didn't start with necessarily your bad choices. It started with something that you brought into your marriage. Something that was not talked about, something that could not be counseled out, right? A lot of times, I'm trying to get my husband to go to marriage counseling. And I always say, okay? Because I have counseled both husband and wife. And baby, if you have ever sat in one of those sessions, that's why I was like, God, I can't keep doing this. This right here, this is too much, okay? Counseling a husband and a wife, and you know that that husband is not being honest, and you know that that husband is not being truthful, and you know that there are certain things that he's playing mind games with her. I had this one couple. I remember the husband. I know what he was doing. It was it was making me sick. I know he was intentionally just showing up to these sessions to say, I did it, right? He was just intentionally showing up to these sessions to say, I did it. I went to counseling, it didn't work. And what I try to tell wives all the time is, if your husband is dealing with something supernatural, a demon, if he got witchcraft or something going on, counseling is not going to help that, right? Counseling is not going to help that. What that wife have to do and figure out is how now I deal with this demon, how I deal with this witchcraft. How do I, as his wife, still be here, love him, be a representative of Christ, and walk out my own salvation and still be able to face these things that I'm facing, right? So it's not about, counseling, all right? So sometimes certain things was just not addressed. That you couldn't counsel them out. The red flags were ignored. And a lot of times you just swept some things right up underneath the rug, okay? Now years and years have passed. And that very thing that you try to just, sweep across, get rid of, not deal with, it has resurfaced. And now it has resurfaced with vengeance. It has resurfaced with vengeance. One of the things and one of the reasons why my drive was so much towards, when I first started coaching, was so much towards premarital couples or couples who were, planning to get married, is because my husband specifically said, I don't want to do counseling. He did not want to do counseling. He specifically did not want to do marital counseling. I was talking to a young man yesterday at work, and he was telling me how, oh yeah, I want to get married. I'm planning to get married, and I'm ready. You can do it today. I said, okay, well, I can help you with that. Yes, Coach C gonna promote her business at all costs. Okay, I said, well, I can help you with that. I said, but you will have to do some sessions with me. I would have to do some counseling with you. He's like, oh, I don't want to do it, and I don't want to do it. And it's like, a lot of times these men do not want to deal with some things that needs to come up to the surface, because what happens is when you do get married, that stuff magnifies. It gets bigger, right? And so the very thing that you have tried to avoid has now resurfaced, and it resurfaced with vengeance. Why? There is a whole lot of you that God wants to deal with way before he deals with your husband in your marriage entry. There are some things that he wants to deal and work out in you before he gets to your marriage and your husband. He wants to make you his bride, right? He wants to make you his bride. But in order for him to make you his bride, you have to first be presented as spotless. If we go to Ephesians 5:27, it says, so that Christ might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. This is why I talk about his wife, right? This is why I represent and I talk about his wife. That's where it comes from. Wife, you will not be able to win your husband over on your own. You just won't be able to do it. I'm sorry. Okay? You have to be in good standing with the Lord and allow him to work out some things in you. And that's where the alignment part comes in at. You have to be aligned. And as they would tell me at work, you have to be aligned with no gaps. Right? You have to be aligned with no gaps. When God presented Eve to Adam, he placed Adam in a deep sleep. He worked on Eve, and then he presented her to him, right? If we go back to the story in Genesis, okay? He said, let me put this dude to sleep. Let me work some things out in her, and then I'm going to present her back to him. And this is one of the things I always share with wives when it comes down to the separation, why I always say that separation sometimes is not always a bad thing. Me being separated from my husband was one of the biggest blessings in my life, right? Because it allowed God time to work on me, work some things out in me, to show me some things, to grow me up in some areas, right? and do some things in me. So now when I get you in this healthy spot, I get you back to this healthy place. Now I'm able to present you in front of your husband, and you are that healthy bride that I need you to be. And now he being drawn to you, you are able to draw him to me. Right? God knows what your husband has done to you, wife. And a lot of times I feel like wives sometimes do not know this, or they don't believe this, or they have forgotten this, right? But God is fully aware of what your husband has done to you. And he has allowed the enemy to overtake your husband. I think it's a Bible verse in Proverbs that talks about that. You know, your husband, when he falls into this place, you know, he has come underneath God's wrath, right? He has come underneath God's wrath. God has allowed it, right? God has allowed it. This is why I always tell wives, your marital pain, your marital injury, it's not always a bad thing. I know it hurts. I know it's painful, right? But it's not always necessarily a bad thing, because God is working some things out for both of y'all on both ends, okay? So he's fully aware of what your husband has did, and he has allowed it. He has allowed the enemy to put your husband in a deep sleep. This is where he is when he is walking in darkness, okay? Your husband is in darkness. Your husband has not come to the truth or awareness about Jesus Christ. He's in a deep sleep. And God is allowing your husband dysfunctionness. He's allowing his negative behavior. He's allowing his the things that he's doing. He's allowing these things, why? For a season, for a limited time, for only a moment. But in the meantime, while he's allowing your husband to be in this place, he is working on you. This is what he wants to do. He's working on you. He's doing some things in you. But don't think for a moment that your husband is just getting away with this stuff. Everybody have their day, right? Everybody have their day. Transparent moment. So my husband loves my feet now, okay? And I wouldn't say he loved my feet in the beginning when we first got married. He loves my feet, right? I remember going to my nail tech, and telling her, like, girl, you got to make sure you fix these toes, get my feet right, because one of the things that Mr. C gonna do is come for the feet. he be coming for my feet. And so that was something I just always, like, just highlight. It was a big deal, a big deal for me, that he would always, like, come playing with my feet or whatever. Well, I remember at one time when my husband used to pick on my feet, and I could not understand this for the life of me. I just did not understand why this man always had something to say about my feet. And one of the things he would say was, your feet looks like the beast of the enemy. Now, in my head, I was saying to myself, well, what does the beast of the enemy look like? Like, what does that look like? How do you know what the beast of the enemy look like? Right? And he said, you stand a certain way, and that's how the enemy stands. And I would be like, what? Like, what does that even mean, right? He would say stuff like, you got 3 toes, and look like you got, you got 2 feet on this side. I said, well, I do have 2 feet, sir. Like, I couldn't understand what he was going on, and he would be looking at, and but the way his eyes was looking, and he'd be like, ugh, like something is wrong. Like he was seeing double on my feet or something. And so, that will really, really bug me out. And I'm like, okay, this dude is delusional. He's tripping, and something is definitely wrong. But every time I would go downstairs and I ain't had no shoes on, and my feet would be polished, and I'm like making sure my feet were still dead, even during this time. He would always, his eyes would go straight to my feet. It was like he would go straight to my feet, and I would be looking, and he'd be looking at my feet, and you would think that something was really, really wrong with my feet. The way he was describing it, when he was looking and trying to express to me, like, my feet something was wrong with them. Then one day I got a revelation about that. I got a revelation about that from God, and God had asked me, Tanika, what do the feet represent in the kingdom? What part of the feet does the armor represent? What armor? What part of the armor does the feet represent? Right? And then that's when it hit me. That's when it hit me. God said, Tanika, your husband is criticizing your feet because your feet represents the gospel. You come in peace. You come in peace, bringing the word of God. And the enemy that's working in your husband, he does not want you to share with him the good news. So before you can even get anything out and before you can even say anything, your husband attacks your feet. And he attacks your feet by trying to keep you from sharing the good news. He attacks your feet by trying to keep you from sharing with him what God may want you to share with him at that time, right? And so this is why he attacked your feet. Wife, you have to be in such a good place with God where God will communicate and reveal to you things like that. When you know and recognize that the enemy is trying to come for you, when you know and recognize that what the enemy is doing, when you know and recognize how the enemy is trying to shake up things in your marriage and how he does not want you to get the word of God out to your husband by being a representative. Because a lot of times wives feel like being a representative of Christ means I have to preach to my husband. No, a lot of times God didn't use me to preach. I declared some things. I would do certain things. I just presented some things in my house. Like worship was played in my house a lot. My husband and children, they would see me walking throughout the house, in the middle of the night praying. I put crosses and anointing oil everywhere, on every inch, in every place in our home. So there was a certain things that you can do without saying a word, right? Without saying a word. But the enemy wanted to hold me back from bringing that good news. He was trying to attack me and having my husband to focus so much on my feet and attack me in a way, and especially when it was such a place that he adored and loved so much at one point. And so that was something that God had brought out to me. Wives, if you want to see changes in your marriage relationship, you need to first work out your own relationship with God with fear and trembling. If you want to see changes in your relationship, in your marriage, you need to first work out your relationship with God. Wife, you would not be able to draw your husband to Christ if you are not willing to first do your own personal work. I come over here and I say y'all all the time, I'm not a preacher, okay? Sometimes I feel like God be trying to tap me on my shoulder for that. Lord, please don't do this to me. My daddy used to tell me all the time, you're going to be a preacher. Please don't do this to me, Jesus, okay? This work right here is already hard enough. I'm not a preacher, but I am a woman of faith. And God has chosen me. God has chosen me to coach wives whose husbands are unbelievers or whose husbands have walked away from their faith, right? Who husbands have maybe at one time were believers or was, in a healthy relationship with God, and they have lost their way, right? I could, not understand for the world of me, why would God ask me to do something like this? Because I was that one. I was that one who absolutely adored marriages. It was like I wanted to figure out why, when I was a little girl, people will always say, "We gotta pray for your marriage. We're gonna pray for your marriage." I wanted to solve that mystery. I don't know if y'all watched the Jamie Foxx special, Bay. Okay, that thing blessed me and my whole entire soul. But one of the things that stood out to me when he talked about, when you think about being famous and having this fame and having, this good life, you don't think about the tragedy part of it, right? You don't think about tragedies. And, God had blessed him with all these things, but God had also blessed him with had also blessed him with his illness that he had. I don't want to give the spoiler if y'all hadn't seen it. And of course, that story reminded me a little bit of Job. But I also thought about my own self, and I put myself in that position. Like, when I talk about marriage, and when you first get married, you don't think about going through heartache. You don't think about separation. You don't think about living two separate lives. You don't think about y'all not gonna be talking, or y'all not gonna be being intimate. I coach wives who been married for only a short period of time, and in that short period of time have not even enjoyed intimacy with their husbands. You don't think about sleeping in separate rooms and him being involved with another woman. You don't think about that kind of stuff when you walk down that aisle, and when you say I do, and when you are going to pick out your wedding dress. You don't think about those types of things when you get married. And that was something that I've always questioned God. Like, God, how I have always felt about marriage. Why would you let me go through all this stuff? Like, why do I have to go through all this pain? Why I had to go through all this suffering? I've always been an advocate for marriage, and I've always been that person. And I wasn't into the big dresses, and I didn't have to have the big old wedding, and I just wanted to be his wife. And God said, I know. But I had to give you a full understanding of what his wife means, okay? Go get the book. Go get the book. Right? And so I say all that to say, no, I'm not a preacher, but I'm a woman of faith. And God has chosen me to coach wives who husbands, who are unbelievers or who husbands have walked away from their faith. And God uses kingdom. Let me emphasize this part. God uses kingdom helpmates to draw his sons back to him. 95% of this journey, wife, requires faith. And that's what a lot of times people do not understand or they're not aware of. 95% of this journey requires faith. Faith to keep believing. Faith to keep going. Faith to keep showing up. Faith to do the work. And faith to invest. Right? Why Her Buoyancy Boost? Right? Because y'all was like, Coach T, you always talk about your curriculum, Her Buoyancy Boost. Why Her Buoyancy Boost? Because I am a witness that Her Buoyancy Boost worked. Coach T is a witness that Buoyancy Boost worked. God gave me Her Buoyancy Boost. He gave me He gave me my curriculum. Back then, it was me journaling notes and taking notes. But that is what God used to help me bounce back from the marital grief and the marital pain that I was going through, and to also regain and realign my relationship back to him. Why was you? I've walked many of your shoes. I've experienced many of what you went through. My marital injury was all the above. Right? Everything I listed, the abuse, the mental and emotional abuse, the addiction, adultery, abandonment, I dealt with all the above. Even the physical part, right? Not so much on my husband's end, but on my end. I was the physical one because I was fighting back. Like, dude, what is wrong with you? Like, I ain't used to this, okay? We use hands, okay? He used his mouth, but I use hands. And God had to get on me about that. And I will never forget, God said, I don't like how you keep on putting your hands on my son. Like, God literally had to call me out. Like, I'm not okay with you putting your hands on my son. And I remember it was in that moment, in that time where I had to really, really think differently about how I responded to my husband when it came down to that. Because my husband was not a violent person, right? His mouth was, his mouth was cruel, but he wasn't a violent person. But I was like, I don't know how to use words like that. So what I do, I would use my hands, and God called me out on that. And so that's why I tell wives, I don't coach wives in that area, because the only thing I can tell a wife to do is don't do that, or don't be involved in that, or don't be a part of that. It was only by God's grace that my husband and I still remain married almost 20 years later, even going through that. But my husband showed me, God allowed my husband to show me that I didn't want to be fooled with, because I thought I could put my hands on my husband, and he was like, no, I ain't no buster. I'm gonna put my hands back on you too. So we learned real early on in our marriage that was not our area. We weren't gonna go that route, just because I liked my face. I like the way I showed up at work. I didn't want to be looking like, somebody to beat me up or whatever. And I didn't want to do that to him either. And so that was something that God had dealt with me early on in our marriage. And so I said it to say, I was you, wife. I was you. And my injury was all of the above. The biggest part of my injury was addiction, though, was alcohol addiction. That was the area that, I tell myself I can talk about that all day long, because I know that area very, very well. That was the biggest part of my marital injury. Without God's grace and the people he placed on my path to help me, I would not have made it, right? I would not have made it. My coach, my mentor, was a huge part in me getting through what I got through in my marriage. And this is why I always just highlight that importance of having that one-on-one person. Like I said, groups work, yes. And even I am doing a group with, Her Buoyancy Boost in January, but it's something about that one-on-one with that person. It's a different scenery. It's a different setup. It's a different atmosphere. And I just love how the Holy Spirit moves and works even in those settings. But back to Her Buoyancy Boost. Her Buoyancy Boost gives wives 13 steps to take in order to bounce back from a difficult situation in their marriages. It focuses on wives' inner healing and how to enforce boundaries, how wives can learn how to take care of themselves. That's that self-care. how to react and respond to a unhealthy spouse, but also to other unhealthy relationships. One of the things, bonuses about Her Buoyancy Boost is that it doesn't only help you in your marital relationship, in your unhealthy marriage, but it also helps you in other areas of your life, in other relationships that are not the healthiest, right? And like I've mentioned, if you're not on my email list, get on my email list. But I'm gonna share again this week that I am doing Her Buoyancy Boost group setting. It's a trial run. It's a trial run group setting that will be starting January the 2nd, 2025. All right. This group setting is very, very similar to the 12-step program, like in AA, right? That is actually how I put together the Her Buoyancy Boost, because because of my husband addiction, the Lord specifically told me to go to AA classes, right? I got the AA books. I was going to the AA meetings, and he gave me a time frame. He didn't want me to continue to go to it on a regular basis. He gave me a time frame, and he told me in that time frame I would learn and get what I needed to know, and understand my husband a little bit better when it came down to his addiction and his disease. And that's really what the AA meetings did for me. So the group setting is set up very similar to that, where interaction with other wives are shared in a safe setting, but it comes with the Her Buoyancy Boost curriculum, accountability, assignments, assessment, that kind of thing, or whatever. Because many of the wives are on different levels on their journey, I only offer Her Buoyancy Boost as the base, as the starting place, as the foundational place, right? Her Buoyancy Boost gives wives the tools, the resources, and knowledge that they need to go forward on this journey. So I basically just use Her Buoyancy Boost as a means to give you the information that you need, right? Give you the resources that you need, give you the tools that you need. And then once we do that, you are now able to, break down and start checking in one-on-one. I know and a lot of times, people ask me, well, Coach T, why you don't do groups? Groups ongoing, I don't think it's a healthy thing. I feel like you do your group setting for what it's supposed to be for, the purpose it's supposed to be for. You do it for a time frame. You teach, share what you need to share, and then break off, and then you do your next set, right? It shouldn't be a necessary ongoing thing. I think when you do that kind of stuff, it turns into something else. And so that's one of the reasons why I don't do the group thing. But this is something that God had placed in my spirit about doing Her Buoyancy Boost in a group setting, giving the wives this opportunity to do this for this time frame, giving them the information, and then from there they're able to move on and do the one-on-ones. Okay, one of the greatest benefits is that wives get to come together with a community of other wives who are experiencing some of the same common things they are experiencing. And like I said, these sessions are limited to 13 weeks. So afterwards, the wives are able to have one-on-one sessions at a discounted price. A lot of times, wives are asking questions like, how much is going to be, or how much it'll be after this, or how much And the reason why I charge like I charge, because when you just come just to check in, or you just come to just want your consultation, and you don't make a decision to do Her Buoyancy Boost, that's it. Like, that's all you get. My time is too valuable for that. my time is too valuable for that, and what I'm sharing and teaching is too valuable for that. And so once you take the Her Buoyancy Boost and you invest, now you're able to get it at the discounted rate, right? So I'm offering this 13-week course for $1,500. $1,500 was the price that I started off with when I first started doing Her Buoyancy Boost for 6 weeks, right? And I was doing it for 6 weeks with my one-on-one clients. Payment arrangements can be made through PayPal. And then if you are not able to do it through PayPal, then Coach T would, definitely work something out with you. If you are interested, committed to do the work, all right? One of the things I always share with wives is, Coach T is a cheat sheet. Coach T is a cheat sheet, honey, because I was you. I walked where you walked. I feel like God allowed me to go through a lot of what my wife clients have gone through or going through as a means so I can help. I'm able to touch certain things, and that's why I niche down to a specific audience where I'm not coaching everybody. That's why I don't really coach wives. Like I said, if you're dealing with physical abuse, I don't really coach the wives who who may have, like, dealt with the outside children. That's something I just continue to pray the blood of Jesus against it. That's not my story. That had not been my story. But I do coach you, but I'm not that's not my main area, right? My main area of expertise is it's in the area of addiction, addiction, abandonment, adultery, mental and emotional abuse. Like that's the area that I most roll in the most. And so I tell wives all the time, I'm the cheat sheet because I was you, along with my own almost 20 years of marriage by God's grace. Come on, Jesus. By my own 20 years of marital experience, my experience in ministry, and my experience in the medical profession, along with my spiritual gifts, God has allowed me to coach and to help other wives, right? How do I get in alignment with God? This is a $1 million question. How do I get in alignment with God? By working out your own salvation with fear and trembling, by doing what God has instructed you to do, by doing your own inner necessary work so that you are able to do what he has instructed you to do. Many times, wives are missing the biggest part of this journey, which is investing in themselves. They're not investing in themselves, and therefore they're not getting what they are needing in order to do the work and do the things that God has called them to do. All right. And then the last thing, how do I get in alignment with God? By being obedient to God's voice and pursuing the next steps on your journey. I've shared before, sometimes working in groups, that's the starting place for some wives. That's a help. Sometimes going to a pastor, that's a starting place for some wives. That's a help. Sometimes going to a counselor or a therapist to talk out, your differences. That's a starting place. That's a help. But wives have to get in a place and get in alignment with what God is ordering your steps and how he's ordering your steps and what he's calling you to do next. So many wives are trying to avoid God and they're looking for it in the scripture. Like, I don't see this in the Bible. I don't see this in the Bible. But we cannot only base God's voice only to the Bible. The Bible tells us that every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God, right? That's not just his written word, but that's also a rhema word. And one of the reasons why I highlight and talk about the 5-4 ministry in my coaching curriculum is because wives need to know how to hear from God in that way. It's not just the written word. The written word, you need the written word. The written word shouldn't contradict what God's rhema word is saying, right? But you need the written word, but you need to also know how to hear from God. I wanted to share this book too. One of my clients had showed me, come on, Jesus, about this book I'm starting to read. And it was so amazing to me because I always talk to my wife clients about, reading and getting books. But a lot of wives I work with, they say, well, I haven't heard from God, or God haven't told me anything, or I haven't heard an audible voice yet from God. Baby, get this book right here, okay? And it talks about the impressions of God and how God speaks to you through impressions and why it's so important for you to get in alignment in knowing what your spiritual gifts are. So many wives are not familiar with these spiritual gifts. This is something that we talk about in Her Buoyancy Boost, something that we work on. Something that I teach wives because this is an important part of your journey. A lot of times when I coach wives, one of the questions I ask, do you know how to pray in the spirit? Because praying in the spirit, you don't have to know how to pray in the spirit to reach God or to get heaven to respond to you. But that is another weapon that is used against the enemy, and that's another weapon that you can use to gain access to God on another level. And one of the questions I always ask is, what level do you want to be on? Do you want to be on the same level that you are now next year? Do you want to be in the same place where you are now next year? Like, there are certain things, like a lot of people, do you have to know how to do it? No, you don't have to know how to do it, but it does help. All right, you're right. You don't have to necessarily go to work, but if you want to live in a house and be able to pay your bills, you don't have to necessarily do any of this, right? But certain things help. And so these are some of the things and some of the tools and resources that I give and share with wives, teach wives in the coaching curriculum. These lessons are life lessons that you can't Google this, okay? You don't Google somebody else's story, right? This is something that a person has actually walked through, been through, and can help a wife while they're going through this. I've heard in the past that having a coach is a luxury, right? I've heard this. Having a coach is a luxury. But if you are a wife who God has asked to stay in an unhealthy marriage, having a coach is a necessity. right? Having a coach is a necessity. It is important for wives to make a decision in this year, right now, in this time, to take advantage of doing what is necessary, what is needed for you to get through this journey, for you to get to the next place on your journey. I think it was Pastor Darius. He talks about God will bless you on whatever level that you're on. Like if you decide to stay there, then God gonna bless you right there. If you don't want no more for your life, if you don't want anything else, God will bless you right there in that place. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Some people are content and cool and calm and collected with that, right? But for the ones who know that I want more, I know that is more. Let me tell you a little secret. Y'all not gonna like this. A lot of times, certain marriages that God has told wives that will be restored, but then they sometimes, however, don't end up being restored. Some of that has to do with the disobedience of that wife. Some of that has to do because that wife was unwilling to do the necessary things. Some of that has to do because the wife was unwilling to take the necessary steps. Some of that has to do because the wife was unwilling to invest. She was unwilling to step out on faith. Some of those things happen for reasons like that. I ain't saying it happen all the time, but it happens. It happens because that wife is comfortable. She's okay with being content. She's okay with being in that same spot. She's okay with God right here, right here. This is my happy place. This is what I'm good at. This is what I want to land at. This is what I want to. I'm right here, and she never moves on to the next place. And God, like, I had so much more for you. I had so much more to offer you. There's so much more I wanted to do for you. And so I want to encourage you guys, if you are in a position and you're ready to start doing your work and you want to take advantage of the Her Buoyancy Boost group coaching, like I said, this is not a price that I give clients at my one-on-ones for 3 months. Absolutely not. This price is because you're in a group setting, right? You're in a group setting. And the deadline to secure your slot is December 25th. I did that purposely because I want wives to gift themselves with taking care of themselves in this upcoming year, right? I want them to gift themselves and get on board, get in alignment with God's plan for their life, right? Now, before I let y'all go, I know I've been showing y'all my book, okay? If you have it already, I want you to go to the page. Y'all might can't see that. I'm showing it to Instagram. I'm showing it to YouTube. And it talks about, are you his wife? It's a assessment that I usually would share with my wife clients to do at the end of the year, right? It's an assessment. And a lot of times wives are trying to figure out where they are on that journey. If you take this assessment, the assessment will tell you exactly where you are on your journey, what it is that you need to work on, what you need to improve in. Ma'am, if you scored 70 and below on that assessment, I want to encourage you to sign up for Her Buoyancy Boost group coaching. Okay? I want to encourage you. If you score 70 and below on that assessment, I want you to sign up for the Her Buoyancy Boost group coaching. Now, you might say, well, I ain't scored 70. I scored 75 or I scored 80 or what have you. But you have not taken Her Buoyancy Boost yet, and you know that God has been impressing on you to do the next steps, to be impressing on you to do the next things. I want you to sign up. This book here was referred to me by a client. She didn't know that a couple of days prior to me speaking to her in that session, that God had been talking to me about, Tanika, I need you to start taking your healing gift more serious in this new year. I need you to take your healing gift more serious. And I'm saying to myself, God, here you go again with this foolery. Here you go with the foolery again, right? But God had been telling me, I need you to start reading and starting to study a little bit more and start, really getting more, insight about your healing, gift. And so when she and I was talking in her session and she mentioned this book and it talked about healing, I was like, oh my God. Baby, Coach T, Prime, Amazon, the book came the next day, okay? Don't mess around when you know that God is telling you to do something. Don't be prolonging this and saying, oh, I'm going to wait. Oh, I'm going to do this next. Get on board and start doing your work now, right? Start doing your work now. Like I said, this is something that you want to invest in yourself. A line of credit. Put it on your credit card. Like I said, PayPal have payment arrangements for you, right? And even if PayPal doesn't have payment arrangements for you, Coach T, with some of the committed ones, maybe some of the ones I've been talking to and working with, I'm able to work with you with the payment arrangement if you want to go ahead and sign up for this, all right? So you can sign up at my website, www.marriagechroniclesbytanika.com. Now, if you have already taken the Her Buoyancy Boost, or you have already started, working with Coach T, but you saying, you know what, I want to start checking in, I want to encourage you to check in. If you have never worked with me and you need to figure out what you want to do starting going forward, now that you are at this place, I want to get my life together. I want to see, what God is calling me to do. I want to encourage you to sign for your consultation. You can do that at www.marriagechroniclesbytanika.com. Listen, why? This is the season, this is the hour for you to get in alignment with God. Do not go into this new year doing the same things that you always been doing, and God has been tapping on your shoulder and telling you it's time for you to do your work, right? It's time for you to do your work, all right? So sign up today, www.marriagechroniclesbytanika.com. Listen, now that I got this thing on pat, I need to see how do I end YouTube. I'm going to end Instagram first, all right? Instagram, love y'all. I'll talk to you soon. Blessings. All right, so I'm going to end them. Okay? Because I don't want to mess this up. I don't want to mess this up. Her alignment. All right, so sorry. I'm sorry. All right, now let me see. Love y'all. Blessings. Let me see how I can save this. Okay, nope. I'm gonna do copy link. I'm gonna copy the link. All right. Now, does that mean I don't know if that, now how do I end it? Nope, that was a flip. Maybe I just X out. Yeah, I really, really hope it went through. I really, really hope it went through. But if not, for the ones of you who were live, thank you. I appreciate y'all. Blessings. I see y'all on the other side. Okay?